friends, welcome back. This is another John's Comics with Kids TV show deep dive. You can go back through my channel. You can find hours of Lost and hours of The Wire, but we've moved on. We're now into season 3 of my TV show deep dive shows, and we're doing Ted Lasso. Last time we talked about the pursuit of excellence and sports, discussing in and around what that means on the show Ted Lasso. Tonight we're going to be talking about mental health, and I got some great community members hanging out backstage that I can't wait to bring on for you guys. So let's jump with Brother John Comics himself. What's up, John?
What's good, brothers and sisters?
We got all the Johns.
That's all right.
We should have found more Johns to throw in here.
Oh, I'll always take a Bob, though.
All the Johns. Yes. It's funny because my older brother is Bob, and we got everything comics. We got Bob.
One of these guys is not like the other. How's it going, guys?
Graybeards United.
Exactly.
Yeah, so this is Brother John, but my brother Bob is Bob, but this is Bullseye Bob. What a great community we got of gentlemen here. I've got links down below for the YouTube for these gentlemen as well. You can find them by the same names, Brother John Comics, Everything Comics. You can find them on Instagram as well. Gentlemen, thank you for coming and talking not only a great show, Ted Lasso, but a big topic here, mental health. So I appreciate, we're going to try to balance the quality of this television program with the importance of the big messages behind the show, because I jokingly said before we went live, when people tell me, oh, that's that Ted Lasso, that's that soccer show, I'm always like coming back with, no, it's about mental health. Like it's the mental health show, because that seems to me at least to be the fundamental topic of Ted Lasso. So hopefully we get into some of that together, because I think there's a lot of juice here. So I'm going to run through, say hi to the chat, and then we're gonna dive into this thing here. We got good. Kevin Entropy and Comics tailgating early. What is on, Kevin? He was here almost an hour ago. No, he was here yesterday. Holy cow. Some of these are people from yesterday. Thank you, folks. Yeah. Chris from Lost in Comics. Appreciate you, sir. Appreciate you. And nominated for several comic book community awards. Chris, good luck for you, sir. We got Old Wolf Tony. He's on that East Coast like Brother John here. He's staying up 10 o'clock now. Tony, get some sleep, buddy. Get some sleep. We got my good friend Backseat Driver, 5280.
Driver.
Been a hot minute, sir, although I got to hang out with him down in San Diego not too long ago in person. Good to see you, my friend. We got the bearded comic bro. What is going on? Get some gray in that beard. Maybe you could join us some point. Still too early for you. Yeah, TJ the Slab Dragon can't be a John show without being late. Come on. It's 3 minutes. 3 minutes. We were having a good chat backstage. We got Rob Boswell in the chat. What is going on, Rob? Swinging into action there. I'm not wearing the whistle or the costume. It's hot in California right now. I'm not putting on a sweater. I'm not doing any of that. This is not a cosplay show.
Whistle.
My mouth is sensitive to impure metals. How would Ted Lasso inspire John to not be late to a game? Ooh, you can debate that amongst yourselves. What's up, Perry, in the chat? One of his many channels. I appreciate you, sir. You are mental, Rob, and that does count. We appreciate you. Chris, my man, I got issues, says biggest takeaway from Ted Lasso is I'm not the only person who thinks tea is disgusting. Well played, Chris. We got Don Gustavo saying the worst part is when something happens and no one believes you for mental health reasons. And we'll definitely talk a lot about personal lives and things in and around our lives concerning mental health strategies or interactions we've had, successes or failures or challenges, any of that kind of stuff. Certainly, this is a broad topic for tonight. We got Eric, and he says, watching 2 shows at once tonight. He's got Justin on the computer and me. You don't need Justin. He's just talking about Daredevil. We got the biggest Daredevil fans right here. Bullseye Bob himself.
And they started like an hour ago.
Justin's got at least 3 more hours.
I mean, you should not have to listen to Justin for more than an hour.
He's just rambling at this point.
Yeah.
Right? Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody in the chat, for joining us. And thank you to Bob and John for being here tonight. And I want to kick it off. I mentioned earlier, I feel like this is a show about mental health. I'd love to hear whether you feel like that's one of the main topics for you when you watched it. But more specifically, and I'll start with you, John. What do you think if you agree that this is one of the big topics of the show, what do you think the writers are trying to say about mental health? What is their philosophy on when it comes to mental health?
I think for me, and I think a lot of it comes from what the viewer brings and their own perspective, obviously. So for someone like me and where I was at the time I found the show, it was all about mental health because that was where I was and things I was dealing with.
Sure.
The main thing, the key takeaway for me at the start was the recognition that they really kind of wanted to bring home the point that empathy is not a weakness. And also that struggle is not a kind of a lone burden that we have to carry. Those kinds of things really kind of those kind of underlying themes is what sucked me in at the very beginning of that first season. Totally. And I was like, okay, I'm on this ride because there's things here I need.
Right. Yeah. It's like we found our own diamond dogs, right?
Yeah. And that's a huge part of it. I mean, I think we'll probably get to that later, but finding kind of, your crew and this, a support system to be able to be vulnerable with,
totally.
And know that judgment's not going to be there. That's a huge part of it. And I think they took something that was fun and kind of silly in that whole Diamond Dogs thing, but really made it into a kind of a powerful concept of, don't hold your struggles to yourself. Find a support system, and be open and vulnerable with everybody in that group and trust. And it's just really
the trust side,
stuff.
Right? Yeah.
It was really important
you trust
stuff.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. Bob, how about you? What were your takeaways as far as what they were trying to tell the audience, or what you brought to this concept of mental health?
Well, I think when there was an article that I read with the writers, and one of the things that they wanted to do was not just to show you characters that were involved in soccer, but all of them had their own issues that they brought to the table, and they wanted to kind of illustrate why they were the way that they are. And so that definitely comes out. But mental health is one of those pieces that for all of us, it's a struggle. And from doing recovery and counseling with people, one of the things that I have found that is a universal truth is that healing in any form, especially when it comes to inner healing, is learning about how to trust again. And returning to that state that you were before you were wounded, before you took on lies, before you had father wounds, all these different things that we see illustrated inside of the show. That journey of getting back to that place of, before you were wounded and took on these things, is learning how to trust again and learning the right way. We have, the very thing that we need the most is the very thing that's hurt us the most, and that's people. And so, we see this journey it's not this, linear path, to healing. It's messy, and it takes all shapes and forms. And we see that illustrated inside of the show so well. But those instances where you see the light at the end of the tunnel are these places where a lot of the characters have had to learn to trust again, to step out, to tell the truth, or just be honest about where they're at, or allow themselves to be vulnerable to be able to talk about these things. And I think that the writers themselves could not have ever realized just what they had, even though they wanted to bring this to the table. It was illustrated so well inside of the show. And I think that you hit the nail on the head. Mental health is probably the most important topic of Ted Lasso, rather than the fact that it's a comedy or about soccer. Right. It is about mental health for sure.
Sports is the hook that got my dad to watch it, but it definitely was not the takeaway in the end, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree 100%.
We got some other folks jumped in our chat. Obviously, nice to say hi to people like Phil Ailing. Good to see you, sir. Hope that your week is going well. We got JP. What's going on? JP says Diamond Dogs. Yeah, mount up. We got Chet Scotland in the chat. This is not Omni X-Men, buddy. Sorry. Justin's doing his thing. We're on summer vacation. He's doing his Elektra thing. You can catch that later and see how, if they spelled Elektra right. But we're here doing our thing. Gore Vidal says Justin's talking about Elektra on his channel. Glad that people are celebrating Daredevil. In fact, I might do a Daredevil stream on Saturday. So if you guys hang around, we might be doing some of that. Don't worry.
Gore, I just want to let you know that about an hour before his show started, he talked to me. He's invited me to be on his channel, and he knew that he'd be talking about Bullseye tonight. And I told him I'd have to catch it on the replay, buddy.
I got dibs. I called Bob first. I got dibs.
A busy schedule Bob has.
Right?
He's on demand.
Yeah. Thank God.
So back to Ted Lasso, one of my favorite concepts that you guys kind of touched on when you were going around the horn there is the idea that like mental health is an every person thing. It's not like there are just flawed people that have mental health problems and the rest of the people are dancing through daisies. I think it's a human condition that we all have to worry about, our mental health the same way you worry about exercise, the same way you worry about, friendships or work relationships. That mental health is health, and it is presented on the show as something all the characters are trying to manage to varying levels of success. And the character that obviously brings it to the forefront and makes it less of a subtextual thing is Dr. Sharon. And I want to spend a little time on her. Second season, she was a fixture of the show. She wasn't really in the first season. She was barely in the third season, but the second season is the linchpin for this character. And firstly, I want to highlight the fact that she's Dr. Fieldstone. I'm a big Sleepless in Seattle fan. That's the name of the therapist in Sleepless in Seattle. And I know that this isn't discussion of rom-communism, but I do love the fact that they named her theoretically, potentially after the therapist that helps Tom Hanks in Sleepless in Seattle.
100% they had to.
Right? I have to assume, but I'm not gonna. It was Marsha Fieldstone, so maybe this is Marsha's sister Sharon.
Sure.
But yeah, so Dr. Sharon comes in to help the team, but obviously, as much as she's there to deal with players, and some of the inner issues that they're dealing with, we know as an audience that she's gonna get around to Ted at some point and try to crack the core of what Ted's dealing with. How do you guys feel that because obviously picking a therapist, connecting to a therapist, finding the right person that meshes and melds with you, someone who is able to help you diagnose and deal with whatever you're dealing with, that's hugely important and impactful. And I've had, for those that don't know, in my life, I've had therapists. My oldest daughter, Kate, with her anxiety and ADHD, we've gone to therapists and things for her. It's been a big part of finding somebody that connects and is useful in some way. So we'll start with Bob this time. What are your thoughts on Sharon and what she represents within the show?
I love the character. When we first get to see her, of course, she's there because of Danny.
Yeah.
The
yips.
The yips, exactly. And but I think they did a really great job in placing her character as somebody who was juxtaposed to Ted's personality.
Right.
She wasn't something that bought into the charm and enamorment that he has with most people. And and I think she even said that his personality was disarming and that was very interesting. And so, but I think the thing that I loved about how they developed Dr. Sharon and Ted's relationship really brings up a subject that's dear to my heart, which is, how do you find a good therapist or a good group or a good support system, as Brother John said earlier? This is one of the things it's dear to my heart, because I know that in order to be able to get the healing that you need, you have to have a safe place to be able to talk about these things. And that's what came out inside of the show, was that Ted right off the bat. It had nothing to do with Dr. Sharon, but he found therapists not to be a safe place because of what happened in his own marriage counseling appointments.
And I love the way that comes up. I love the way that is revealed over time, the reasons for his distrust. It's not because he's scared to talk about himself or any of these things.
Did we just walk up?
We got a freeze on John.
Oh, sorry. Clearly the daughters are home and on the internet now. But I just liked that the way they brought that out in Ted.
I thought also I liked the whole organic flow of how they handled it all, because, you know, like I said, we didn't see her until season 2. Mm-hmm. You know, season 1, going back, just to skip back, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but season 1 for me personally was that one episode was the most realistic or relatable performance or show of an anxiety attack that I had ever seen. I mean, I recognized that kind of, and I feel like, and they didn't really touch on it, but I feel like it was interesting, and like I said, kind of more organic, that I think the people around Ted recognized the need for help, and that's why Dr. Sharon was brought in. Mm-hmm. He would have had nothing to do with that. You know,
he would never.
He wasn't there yet, so to speak. You know, and I liked that they handled it in such an organic way, that it was people that wanted to help him but didn't know how, and and recognized that something needed to be done in terms of finding a resource for this person. You know, and it goes back to what Bob was saying about
how hard Bob was just talking about how do you do that? How do you navigate those waters, right?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's things that people can do to, you know, to find that safe place. It's and I think it's important because it's not taught. It's not really taught. How do you find a safe place? And
or inversely, as a therapist, how do you create that safe space?
And
also us as citizens of this world and as friends or people or whatever, if we're in a state where we're okay or things are good, be sure that you're open to opportunities to be that safe space,
be that ally. Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Dr. Sharon did some things that are, the earmarks of what you're supposed to do. She was patient. She listened to exactly everything that he was saying without any judgment, without putting anything on him. And the more Ted talked, the more she empathized with what he was saying. She let him know that she was truly listening. And, you know, eventually that came to a place where Ted realized I can trust her. And this is not like the therapist. And so the atmosphere with which you need to be able to open up is one of confidentiality, you know, that nothing is going to be said once you leave that particular room, whether it be a group or a person. The second thing is what I call grace or acceptance, which is no matter what you say, I'm not going to judge you because you need to get this off of your chest, you know. The other thing is accountability, right? If there's things that you need to do as a result of these things that are coming up, I'm going to be a place that I'm going to hold you accountable. And that doesn't mean shaming. That's a lot of people take accountability the wrong way. It's not something we're going to browbeat you or why didn't you do that thing? It's, I know you want to do that. And you've talked about it 100 times and you didn't make it this last time. You failed at it. And that's okay. I know you want to get through this. What are you going to do next? How are you going to be more successful going forward? And you help them stay in that place of stepping out, the accountability. And these are all things that inside of a relationship where you have this safe place cultivated, this is what you're looking for. And I wish that was taught more, but we see it in so many of the relationships inside of the show. We see it in the interactions that he has with Dr. Sharon, because it's not just Dr. Sharon being a safe place for Ted. It's Roy becoming a safe place for Jamie. It's and Keely becoming a safe place for Rebecca. And where these relationships start to form, and you come to a place to where you can open up and be honest because you have an atmosphere that is safe.
Right.
And,
people aren't holding grudges. People are forgiving and holding it. Because I mean, talk about accountability. That scene where Nate has to stare down Beard in the hallway, and Beard is like, "Look, I'm not going to hold a grudge. I'm not, but you're going to be accountable for your actions. And it's, and you know, this is not me letting you off the hook, but it's also not me headbutting you, which everybody wanted to see, but Beard had evolved past that due to these other connections, right?
Absolutely.
And you see that what you're talking about, though, with a therapist who is able to connect and empathize and not just, you see that in the way she speaks all these languages and is connecting with people on their level, the ways in which she doesn't use the same methods for every single person, but finds a way to connect with each one of them individually. Sharon is really interesting because we're never off in her office except with Ted, but we can see the ways in which Jamie, the ways in which Danny, all these players come out of her office
renewed, kind of
better.
Yeah.
That line where she says, "Are you good at your job?" Well, I'm damn good at mine.
Right. Yeah. As good as you're at your job, I'm better at my job.
Right.
The clip you just shared on your IG story, John, that's really an important one, I thought, for the whole relationship, because she built empathy and she built trust, but then she also like took down his defenses. Like, look, you're going to come at me. I'm going to call you on your crap. You know, I'm going to stand up for myself.
And screaming or any of that. It wasn't grandstanding. But it was honest about her feelings, right?
Exactly.
Saying, exactly, it hurt me what you said about my profession.
Yeah. And then, but the key was then she acknowledged to him, you know, self-care can be scary. And that's such a key line because it is. I mean, it's incredible, that first step to even just recognizing that, hey, I might need some kind of help here, or this might be beyond, you know, my own capacity to figure out.
I don't have an outlet for this information.
Yeah.
I can't, you know, whether it's a friends or in my personal life, I can't express these problems in another constructive way. Right.
And you know, they just did it so well, because you could see kind of an acknowledgement when she said that. He kind of had this acknowledgement like, oh, she does get it. This, I mean, you know, she does. This is real for her. It's not just a pay job, you know, a job she's paid for.
Right.
It means something to her. And it was really important how they handled that character to
totally
to build that trust.
Absolutely. I think the conversation that Dr. Sharon had with her own therapist on the phone, where she basically told her that, you know, in order for Ted to open up, you're going to have to open up to him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until she acknowledged that she was scared.
Yeah.
And then that right there was the tipping point, because it was right after that is when he finally opened up to her. And
which clearly implies she's using a strategy with Ted that hadn't been functional with any of the other players or people that she had been discussing things with.
Right.
And I've seen that dynamic play out many times where I've been working with somebody, and then I just completely got honest with my feelings in front of them, and that it's all of a sudden the floodgates are open.
Sure.
And it does create an atmosphere of reciprocation in that safe place that is truly wonderful.
Sure. Absolutely. Let's say hello to a couple other friends that jumped in the chat. Crystal from Glitter and Duct Tape, one of the great community shout out people, always in the chats, always supportive. Appreciate you, my friend. And we got Chop and Drop in the chat. What is going on, Chop? Good to see you, sir. The Jackson Roy Kirk. What is going on, my friend? Always in our chats. Always appreciate it. Old Wolf says self-care. I've been telling John about that for a year. Self-care equals a mani-pedi. He's a big fan. And you know what? It's a great point, and I think it'll come across a bunch tonight, Tony. But the idea of having positive, constructive outlets in life, the ways in which we decompress things that aren't, because as you can see on the show, there are people with outlets that are caustic, people with outlets that are causing more mental health problems than they are resolving. And And what you see are people trying to find positive outlets for these things. And it can be an exercise or a workout. It can be an artistic endeavor. It can be alone time. It can be whatever, as long as it is targeted and useful and you're gaining some sort of resolution from it or understanding about yourself from it, some peace, inner peace, right? So yeah, get your mani-pedi on, my brother. Make that mat. I've seen his toes way more than I think I need to have seen.
I didn't need to hear that.
No, I mean, he sends me pictures all the time. Look what color I got now. It's way better than Perry's toes. Just so anybody knows.
Gosh.
I wanted to talk a little bit about sports and mental health because I know this has been a huge topic, and over the last few years, the idea of even, because I remember as a kid, you never talked about the stress on an athlete or on a player. You would be talking about, if you did, it would be about how clearly this person isn't affected by it.
Right.
Michael Jordan with 110-degree fever shooting the killer's jump shots. Everybody's like, look, it's water off a duck, right? He doesn't care at all. And I think it's only seemingly they've been in the last handful of years that the discussions in and around sports professionals and mental health has really become a big thing, and it's clearly a big part of the show. So start with John. What are your thoughts on modern athletes and mental health and the show in particular, obviously having a lot to say about that?
Well, we talked a little bit about how the whole soccer backdrop is just a backdrop. I think in terms of not just athletes, though, a lot of us take so much of our self-worth and our value from what we do. What our job is, what our career is, and where we are in it, and so forth. And it has to be the same for athletes, right? And in times, they change. I'm a baseball guy. I grew up playing baseball and deep into watching baseball and so forth. The number of baseball players in the 70s that were functioning alcoholics and literally is
you're right.
Is astonishing. And that's how they coped, and that's how they dealt with things. And thank God we've evolved over that
right
past that. But we had the steroid era where guys were doing anything to get ahead and to deal with that pressure to perform and be at that certain level.
Because at that level, all of your successes and failures, it's not like if I had a bad day as a teacher, everybody's seeing it splattered in the newspaper the next day. All of their successes and failures and strikeouts and statistics are in the sports page every day.
Right. And that's the big thing is like, we've hopefully evolved where we understand some of these things, and those key issues that were brought up in the show, have the little things at the early start where, Keeley calls Roy on his stuff. I'm Roy Kent and I get paid to play a game and I'm mad all the time or whatever, she calls him on it,
perfect. Oh,
and a lot of people are like that. Look, you get paid to play a game,
right.
So, what problems could you have? And that's, you can't dismiss things like that. That's, because we find out at the end, as Roy's journey has come through, they're they play the sport, but they're also people. And none of us know what the other has going on. And that's the key, right? These people, we see one aspect of their lives as an athlete, and we judge them or view them in that lens. We have no clue what else they're dealing with. So, the stresses of being an athlete are immense, especially if you're at the pro level.
Right.
But guess what? The other stresses of life don't just disappear. So
loving what you do does not negate the fact that it's hard work. Right. I was talking
100%.
to my daughter the other day about how, like, the goal is to you're going to find a job where either you're willing to do work that other people won't, or you're willing to be better at it than other people are who do that work, right? It doesn't negate the fact that it's still work, whatever it is. Nobody's going to pay you to do nothing. So, like,
100%.
Whatever it is going to be work. But can you find joy in it? It doesn't negate the stresses, the challenges, the hours that you're putting in. It doesn't vanish. What you said reminded me of the movie The Rookie with Dennis Quaid, where at one point he says, hey, we get paid to go to work today. Let's go play at work. But like the previous scene was him dealing with the baggage of being away from his family and missing out on great moments at home and not making very much money because he's playing in AAA ball and or double or single A ball and struggling being out, being a grown man playing a game with 20-year-olds who are
Right.
way in better physical shape than him. But reminding himself, the mental health side is, I need to remind myself that I am very fortunate, right? I need to remind myself to be grateful and have gratitude and not just lose sight of those things. But it reminded me of that when what you were saying there. Bob, sorry, I realized I didn't give Bob a chance on this one.
Oh, no, that's okay. The topic of mental health in sports, I think, I don't know. I really never heard the term yips until Simone Biles.
Oh, yeah.
And this came out like right near to there. And I always wondered if they had, kind of wrote or tweaked that episode to kind of come into line with that.
Right. Well, I mean, wasn't it? I remember first hearing it because of the baseball player who was
Chuck Knobloch.
Yeah, Knobloch, who couldn't throw to first.
Yeah,
he got the yips, and every time any game he was trying to throw to first, and it would just be this wild throw, and he had to work through mentally what was going on, getting in the way of something that was so routine mere months ago.
Yeah, and so that was kind of that subject was a level of mental health that went beyond what I've experienced, and so. But anyway, I fully believe that was kind of thrown in there because of what happened to Simone Biles and how much backlash she got from all different angles. And we kind of hear some of that backlash, not against Danny in the story, but we hear some of that backlash against Ted when it was written in the paper that he had the panic attack. And then people are walking up to him and saying, I'm glad the troops in Normandy didn't have panic attack, and, kind of putting that type of, better suck it up, buddy.
Let's put more pressure on this gentleman.
Yeah,
right?
and that speaks to their acknowledging, kind of what I was talking about. That thank goodness we've evolved because, forget 70s era alcoholic baseball players. We had generations that we sent off to wars that we expected them to come back and just deal with it,
carry on as if nothing had happened, as if everything was the same, and we're not going to talk about it, we're not going to acknowledge it, we're going to ignore it and assume you can manage it for yourself, and if you can't, too bad.
I think I had a firsthand experience of not putting too much pressure on a sports star or celebrity. Kind of when I was really young, I was a huge Steve Garvey fan from the Dodgers. And I used to go to Dodger Stadium all the time, and I had an opportunity to go to the dugout, and I was getting things signed by everybody, and I couldn't wait to get to Steve Garvey. And I got up, and I just wanted him to sign my ball, and he wasn't having anything to do with any fans that day. And I was so mad. I was so upset. And, for about a few weeks, I really was holding it against him. I'm like, I pay for his salary, Right. But as a kid, I was hurt. And then I saw the news, and they talked about the divorce that he was going through. And they showed a clip of him, and he just looked so broken.
Sure.
And at that point, I had to realize he's a person just like me, and he goes through stuff just like anybody else does. And that's an immense amount of pressure to put on somebody. And
absolutely.
So I forgave him for that day, but it made me realize that these guys are just people like us.
Because maybe you met him on one of his worst days, and
exactly
how do you judge him by that, right? Isn't that what Ted says at some point? I hope that all of us or none of us are judged by how we are on our worst days.
Yes, absolutely.
My dad is in the chat. What's up, Dad?
Hey, Dad.
What's up, Pop? Good to see you, man. He was talking about the Dodgers as well. He's a big LA sports guy. Loves. I've been to pretty much every sporting arena in and around Southern California. So because of that guy right there.
Right on.
I want to talk a little bit, because now my dad's in the chat. He's a mega John Wooden fan, and I do think there's a lot of crossover between the coaching philosophies of Ted and obviously he has the pyramid of success there on the wall in the clubhouse. And when it all ties into the sense of compassion and support he kind of builds in the clubhouse, because you guys touched on the concept of the news article comes out about how it went down, and he has to confess to the guys on the team, like, look, I held this back from you. I should have trusted you with this information. But their response isn't like the trolls in comment sections. It's not like the trolls on the street corner that shout at him. Obviously, they respond with the compassion that he has instilled in that clubhouse in a big way. I think when you talk about finding your tribe, creating that around you, there is something to be said about attitude reflects leadership and what you're trying to create in the world. Bob, is there anything you have, when obviously leadership elements are at play here, coaching elements are at play here, but it's really more about personal responsibility in being a piece in the machinery of whatever that is, a family, an office, the sports team here. What are your thoughts on the Ted Lasso way?
So, yeah, I was thinking about this earlier, and, when we're on a journey of, becoming the better me, again, healing or recovery is all about learning how to trust again. And when you have a number of guys that are just people that are on that same journey, and you start to cultivate an atmosphere of trust, then some wonderful things can happen. And I think that what was going on inside of the locker room, as well as their personal lives, it was cultivated in eventually what, on his night where he thought he was tripping, he comes up with what do they call
football.
It? Exactly. And that's the type of thing that can happen. There's boundaries start to go away, roles start to go away. It's just about doing what you're supposed to do inside of your role and being able to trust the guy next to you to do the same thing.
Which is a level of accountability, right? Like, I'm accountable to me and to you and vice versa. And that creates this interlocking, this web of trust.
Absolutely. And in order for that atmosphere to be cultivated, you have to have somebody who has already gone through some of this stuff themselves and is bringing that level of atmosphere to the team, the room. And so I wish this happened in more settings. But, being a pastor and having a wonderful men's group at our church, I've seen some of the most amazing things happen because a lot of the guys have been on this journey to get their healing, to become better than they were, to let go of the wounds of the past or the lies that have been put on. And all of a sudden you find relationships and working and doing things with each other a whole different ball game than just these superficial relationships that and I fully believe that if you get a team doing that, they'll beat anybody.
Right? Because so John, like, connected to that, right? This concept of the Lasso way, there's that scene when everyone shows up to fix Sam Obasanya's restaurant, right? This is outside of work, outside of hours, they're bonding together. These are the things that are built on this leadership concept that is infused into the whole crew, right? Do you feel that that's kind of where Ted is the linchpin here?
100%, because some of this is pulled directly from John Wooden, because he was very much the same. Ted sets at the very beginning kind of the foundation that who you are off the field is just as important to me and matters just as much as who you are on the field. The person that you need to be and who you should be. And once they see that they're important, not just for their skill with a soccer ball, that they matter for more than just that, that builds an instant kind of a trust that wasn't there before. And also kind of sets that stage for we're all in this together. We're all pieces to this puzzle that together. And it's not just out there when the crowd is there. It's when we're at our lowest moments or
it's
whatever.
not just those minutes of that game, right? It extends way beyond. And and it happens all through, right? When he's arguing with Jamie about it's practice, the time when we get to be us against ourselves and we can control the engagement, like that time matters just as much as what we're doing outside when we're showing up at each other's houses for Christmas or whatever. Like this is, a group that bands together and backs each other, even when we have to call one another out. Like they call when Jamie finally is able to stand up to Roy and tell him, like, no, what he needs me to do is back off and create space. Like I can't crowd him. Like, and it helps Roy figure out things in his life, even though he's the coach. He's learning from the player the same way. I think and it comes back to Sharon too, opening herself up to being a part of the conversation with Ted. So I love all those like ways in which this system of trust and communication and compassion makes the foundation for all the successes. And it doesn't happen overnight. They don't win those. It's not like they win at the end of the first season. Spoiler to Chicago Schultze, who's not watched the show. But instead it's built on failure being a learning mechanism to what we're really trying to achieve, which is teamwork.
Which was, and that was Ted's goal from the start, and he had nothing to lose. I mean, if he went in and failed, everybody expected him to fail.
Exactly.
The lady who hired him wanted him to fail.
Exactly. So they inverted the major league themology here.
He had nothing to lose. So it's like, all right, well then let me go in and set the things that are important to me in motion, and wins or losses, like he said, they don't matter to me as much.
Absolutely.
And that was that, which we know in professional sports that would not be realistic. Just like we saw 3 seasons of this and it covered three seasons of the team. Yeah. And it was the same team throughout, which would never happen. Some of these guys would have been traded, taken off the world tour. But that's okay. It's fantasy. It's not, like we said, soccer was not the point.
It's idealized, but in that way, there's
because that's not the real issues they wanted to cover.
Right, exactly. What's up, Jeff? He's in Florida. Stay safe. I know that there's definite hurricane warning and stuff going on, so stay safe, my friend. I want to jump to a specific scene in the show, and we obviously can branch off to 100 other ones, but somebody on Instagram posted like the long form version of the scene when Jamie's dad bursts into the locker room. And what I noticed on rewatching it on Instagram for probably the 8th time or whatever that I watched that particular scene. For those that don't know, Jamie is one of the star players on the team, and his dad is clearly abusive, and we don't know how specific the abuse was, but clearly we see verbal abuse and a good shove in the scene. And they just lost a big game against the dad's favorite team, and so the dad is very happy that his team beat them, and he's basically berating the team in a depressed-looking locker room. And it turns ugly when, after being shoved, Jamie pops his dad in the face. And what I noticed on the rewatch, obviously the first time I watched it, I was wrapped up in Jamie and his dad and the intensity of the scene, and the actors are so good, and the scene is really, really well done. But the second or third time through, what I noticed was the interesting responses from the other characters. Because at that point in the show, you expect Dad, Ted Lasso, to come to the rescue. And Ted runs away. He can't handle them. And later we learn his relationship with his father and the complexity of all of these things that he's seeing. And he can't handle it. And he ends up running off and making the really strong mental health decision to call his therapist, and he gets on the phone with her, within moments of this happening. And you see somebody like Coach Beard, who's been this very quiet, not super active member of the coaching staff, who backs Ted, but is always the second fiddle, being the man of action. And he bursts forth, grabs Dad, drags him to the door, and really roughly kind of shoves him out of the place. And
I always love that scene in that, like, everybody's shocked reaction except for Zero. He jumps up. If you notice, he jumps up.
He stands right up. Yeah, he's like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to be ready for it.
Yeah.
And then the And then at the time, the most shocking reaction to me, you have the guy who curses and gets in fights and is always screaming and is always roughhousing. Roy does not throw down. Roy does not rush over there and start fist fighting this guy. He stands and watches the whole scene play out, and then he's the one with the compassion. He's the one that marches over and gives the hug to Jamie, somebody he has been fighting with the entire show up to this point. The complexity of human emotion and things happening in that scene. What were some of your takeaways, John, watching that scene? What were some of the things that obviously Zorro struck you? I'll have to watch again and really zero in on Zorro for that scene.
Yeah, he stands right up. I've like you, I've watched that scene over and over and over. It's just because it's so just well done. And then, even down to the music, that Enter the Darkness George Harrison song just fits perfect with how that kind of builds and goes. But I think it's kind of the big picture of the whole series is like we learn more and more later about Roy.
Right.
And he started professionally at 17, and he talked about the relationship with his parents not being around and his grandparents being the one that kind of, took care of him and brought him. And so his immediate, it just made sense later when you learn more that his immediate reaction was concern for Jamie more so than just getting this, guy out of here.
Yeah.
But it was just so, it was so beautifully done in that it wouldn't have worked with anyone else as well. Jamie needed it to be Roy. Yeah. The adversarial relationship, that thing, the back and forth that they had kind of had and built, over the first season, it needed to be that acknowledgement, coming from Roy of, I see you. I know now that you haven't had it easy, just all of that in one motion, one act of kindness.
And I think it's always quality writing when you feel like it could not have happened any other way, but I did not expect any of it to happen. It was like I was stunned by all the little reactions and the little moments. To have it play out as sort of succinctly as it was. Bob, what are some of your thoughts? Obviously, we talked a lot about some dads and kids and some of those interactions and the challenges going on there.
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add. I myself have watched that scene 1,000 times, and my favorite part of it is Roy walking over and giving him that hug. I've been in situations where somebody, excuse me, has been in a group and just dropped a bomb, and something rather like confessing that they had cheated on their wife and were just broken over it, sobbing. And everybody in the room who knew this person was just absolutely in shock because they never would have thought that this would have ever come out of this man's mouth. And I was the one who got up and I walked over and I just grabbed a hold of him and hugged him, not for anything else, but just in that moment, he just needed the hug. He needed to know that it was okay. And when I first time I saw that scene, and I cried so hard because the same dynamic was playing out. And it was a turning point for Roy. It was a turning point in their relationship. And it definitely illustrated I'm sorry. Did we get
yeah. John's girls are using that internet again.
There we go.
God dang it. Sorry, guys.
But anyway,
every time
I'm just saying that in that particular moment, it was a turning point for their relationship, and as much for Jamie as it was for Roy, because so many things started to happen for them, growing closer after that, and it was, and I didn't realize until today, when John, or not today, but when John had written the post about that particular scene on Instagram to me, how many different reactions were going on. I didn't realize by watching that Beard's reaction to the whole thing was to have his night on the town. You see Sam, going to Rebecca, afterwards. So everybody,
because the next episode you get to see Beard derail.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was something I didn't key into before. So thank you for that. But for me, it was all about that hug, and it says so much in that moment as far as what somebody truly needs, rather than the berating or the judgment or all these other different dynamics that play out most often. The compassion was beautiful.
Yeah, that whole idea of having your worst moment happen in front of, all the people that look up to you as the
Totally.
star and the leader and so forth of this team. And
Totally.
that was a real that was a real hug.
I got some friends in the chat that I didn't say to. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. He wasn't letting go of him.
I definitely delayed. Sorry about that.
All good, man. I do think it's also interesting to see, Bob, like you mentioned, where things go after that for each of the different characters. We've seen all throughout the whole thing this kind of little hints of this codependent relationship that Beard has with Ted, and we learned out later why of how why that's their relationship is the way it is.
Just bugging out here. Sorry, I'm like 2 steps behind everybody.
That's right. We're just carrying on without you, man.
So one of the questions that John had posed about that particular scene was, with all those different interactions happening, was there another place inside of the series where we see a particular moment have so much impact on the characters? And I don't know if he asked you that question when he had typed everything out, but Can you think of another scene that had as much impact as that on multiple people?
I couldn't think of one really directly. That was that level of emotion. I think we kind of, for me, I think, and for the viewer, we got that at the end of season 1. The viewers got to be that audience or that group there that was impacted when Rebecca finally comes and confesses to Ted. And just that simple acknowledgement: divorce is hard. And it doesn't matter what side of it you're on, and just that understanding, and just those simple little words. And it just took, the whole first season was build up to this happening and how it was going to affect things and how it was going to react. And, the impact was for us is that, it's all going to be okay because it was met with all those things we talked about: empathy, trust, acceptance, and kindness. And I think that was like kind of a big impact moment, not just for the characters, but for the audience.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because I think I'm unfrozen now. I think I'm back.
You're back.
I think the big mental health crisis that sort of is spearheading the drama is obviously Rebecca dealing with her divorce and Ted dealing with his divorce. That like these, and later on in these theme shows, I'm going to do a topic of life changes because there's obviously lots of them to look at. But clearly, the mental health crisis that Ted is, arguably running from is his divorce, and the one that is causing Rebecca to go on her destruction of the club is her divorce as well. And the rock that they become for one another to deal with that, I think is incredibly significant. What about you, Bob? Was there a scene? Thank you for continuing without me. You guys are awesome.
I was trying to think, what would John do here?
You're nailing it. This is total StreamYard. We're doing total StreamYard right here. Were there any scenes you thought of that had the same kind of ripple effect?
Yeah, I not as poignant as that scene, because I think that was a definite turning point in the whole series. But the other one that I was thinking of that was significant was the death of Rebecca's father. The funeral that was going on. We had Ted. He's getting ready for the funeral. The panic attack starts happening, and it happens right after he looks at pictures of his son. and he has these memories flashback of these different things that happen between him and his son. And then the last thing you see is the dart going into the dartboard for the Bullseye. And we remember that the story was that he used to go with his dad every weekend to play darts, right? And then that's where you start to find out Ted, when he confesses to Dr. Sharon why he hates his dad. And also juxtaposed to that, you have the scene where Rebecca is talking about why she hates her dad.
It's such a greatly written and edited sequence, because it almost makes it seem like both of them had this traumatic, difficult moment at the same time in their lives. The way they cut between Rebecca confessing about catching her father's infidelity and Ted and his father's suicide, and the ways in which that is clearly impacting them. The confessions are so powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But also at the same time, we also see both Jamie and Roy having this moment contemplating life, have to come and tell Keely that they love her, at the funeral, which was, definitely out of character for both of them, the way they came to it. And and then of course we have the breakup with Rebecca and Sam, after she contemplates some things there. And then it's all tied up at the end of the funeral when Ted walks in and he continues the song for her, which they both came to the realization by Dr. Sharon talking to him, what did you love about your father? And Rebecca finally getting up there and realizing that there was a piece of her father that she loved. And, so I think that is about the only scene I could. There's probably more.
It's the perfect example. I hadn't even thought deeply about it the same way, but all the different ways characters come to the funeral or come from the funeral, and the ways in which that experience, now that they're connected, and it's not just Rebecca's problem, right? It's our problem when she's going through this, and the ways in which they try to just be there for her. They're not going to be able to carry the weight for her, but they can be there for her and sing a couple of notes in a song for her. And it's a great choice.
Or wear shoes that are too tight for you,
or suffer through wearing horrible shoes that they will burn forever. Want to say hi to Damien, Sleepy Reader 666.
Damien!
What's going on? So we got Big B, McFly, the comic guy. What's going on, Big B? We got Gene Paul, Ace Peter. What's going on? Let's see where I missed somebody else. I'm sorry. There's so many awesome people in our chat. I appreciate all you guys coming by, and gals coming by. There's a character. I mean, I know we're almost at the hour mark, and I want to make sure we don't skip anything. But I one of the things I mentioned to you guys was there's a character that I feel like, there's lots of things going on here that I want to mention. You guys did mention Roy, and I did think it's kind of telling that his final scene is sitting down. He's finally sitting with Sharon. Like, the final moment for Roy is, I realize that I've got to work on me a little bit. I'm not ready to be a husband, a dad, or whatever. I can enjoy all those things, but I need to work a little. I got some inner things to work on. And I thought that was nicely telling for the discussion of mental health. But we
because we saw him grow and change so much over the series, but in the end we also saw him sabotage himself, going back to his jealousy or his insecurity, over Keely's relationships with other people. It's like, we thought we got through this, my man. So it was that was really nice to see that last scene where he was getting, he was recognizing, I still have work to do.
Which highlights the concept that mental health is not some people deal with it and other people don't. It's an all life thing. You have to make these choices every day.
I'm cured.
You have to go. You have to continue to work on it the same way you should work on your physical health. These things are not interdependent and unrelated. These are interdependent, valuable things that we all have to put effort into. It's important.
Yeah.
But at the same time, so one of the characters I think is interesting to look at for this is Beard, because we don't necessarily get his backstory or his life story. We get one big speech he makes about his life at the end. But most of the series, he's kind of a mystery, and there's a lot of fun had with the concept that we don't know where he's come from or what he's gone through. But we can see the way in which he is willing to take Nate's apology, the way he's willing to forgive Nate, and hold him accountable for what will ultimately be a coaching relationship they're going to have going forward. What are your thoughts on Beard, who clearly has a wild backstory, has some wild times going on here, whether it's his relationship he's got with the woman that he marries at the end, or whether it's him as a coach and the way he's mentoring and helping people, keeping secrets, the fact that he knows languages that people, don't want him to know. He has several wild nights out in the town. So Bob, what are your thoughts on Beard?
So, yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head. Beard is a mystery through the whole thing, pretty much. And we get these moments where certain things shine through. And I think the thing that comes up the most is how because of the story, now we understand why he's with Ted, how important Ted is to him, to his own healing journey.
Right.
And that he came to a place differently. He went the opposite direction after he was given the grace and the acceptance. He stole from him. And I love how they said his story parallels Jean Valjean.
That's Les Miserables, right?
But we do see these moments with Coach Beard throughout the series where he's stepping up and doing certain things for certain people, and it's coming from his own place of healing. And the one of the last things that's hard for anyone to do once they've received healing is to come from that place of receiving and go to the place of giving. And it's not and you don't really grow until you come to the place of giving. And part of giving is giving to yourself and moving on. And if you see if you look at the very first scene with Beard and Ted in the beginning, they're on the plane, and Ted asked him, "Is this nuts?" And Beard says, "Yeah, this is totally nuts." Right.
But he's still going. He's still going.
But he asked him the same question in the end, and that's when Beard breaks down and says, "I can't do this."
Yeah.
And I'm getting emotional.
No, I mean, the fact that at the end, Beard is then able to say, what's best for me isn't staying with you. Somebody who I felt like was my rock or anchor or whatever that I was tied to indefinitely. Beard finally has his own place and is comfortable being in a foreign land with people he's only known a handful of years, and is willing to make that, at least for a time, a residence for himself.
Right.
What a bold place for Beard to end up when we've clearly seen up until that point. Does Beard exist without Lasso? Can you have Beard without Lasso? What is without Lasso?
That's what I was saying.
I don't think that Beard himself realized that he could be Beard without Lasso.
Which is that line Higgins has. A good mentor hopes you'll move on. A great mentor knows you will, right? And so Lasso's gotten to a place where that little bird's ready to fly, right?
Absolutely. I didn't mean to cut you off there, Brother John.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, they kind of built it throughout the series that this was kind of this weird codependent relationship that Beard had. And then, when they brought in Jane and he started seeing her, and that was a really kind of a weird relationship.
You don't know what to make of it, right?
Yeah. And it was like, this is some, and then you get the payoff at the end where you find the backstory. And, it makes you feel like, Beard felt like maybe there was some level of loyalty that he owed to Ted.
Right.
And that's why he went across the country with him and did all this stuff and stayed by him.
And almost got on the plane and flew home with him.
Yeah,
he was on the plane.
Right. And it was, it took that entire journey for Beard to recognize that, this was Ted gave me grace, not expecting any kind of repayment. He wasn't, I don't owe him anything, that was his to give. And now it's time for me to move forward and be myself, the man I am, and not have to rely on Ted to you know, to kind of take me on my own journey. And it's really well, you know, part of me wishes they'd done that earlier to give that more time to play out the back end of it, revealed that earlier. But I understand, you know, they got to do it for storytelling and so forth.
Well, and it's Beard. You don't know how much is fact and how much is fiction, or how much, you know, there's always that element of Beard where, you know, is he keeping a couple of cards close to the vest? I mean, I love the scene in Amsterdam where he's speaking fluent Dutch, and all along he's been acting like he doesn't know what the teammate is saying whenever he speaks in Dutch. He enjoys having more information than the people in the room with him. He's always reading, he's always gaining knowledge, he's always aware, but he doesn't necessarily express it all, right? Chess, right? A few moves ahead. Yeah, exactly.
I just think it's funny that basically, you know, there's that one scene where he says that he doesn't go to, you know, the codependency groups. He's going for Jane, but obviously he's learning some things there,
right?
But the relationship, you know, in the end, where, you know, Ted didn't expect anything up until that particular point in Beard's journey. He believed he owed everything to Ted, and that's why he was where he was at. I just love that character.
And the relationship is not like second fiddle, first fiddle. There's definitely equal footing for the two of them, because I love when I mentioned this quote in the first live stream, that when he calls Ted out and he's like, that was fine in college, but these are professional athletes, and it's okay that winning is important and it matters. It's supposed to matter. We're professionals now. And Ted needed to be shaken out of the mentality that he had, that these were kids that needed to be protected. These are professionals that still need some level of trust and protection, but they don't need to be cared for like a parent would, you know, that there's a different relationship here. Tons of great people in our chat. I want to say hi to Roscoe. What is up, Roscoe? Good to see you, brother. And this guy, you know, just got done talking Daredevil. If you're a Daredevil fan, like I know Bob and I, you got to get over there. Check out the live stream he just had, chatting up with Read Your Comics Daryl. Appreciate you coming by, though, brother. Yeah, I said hello to Bobby earlier, but Bobby's back. Good to see you, Bobby. Did I miss it? Oh, Magic Lasso, what is going on? He's just happy to see somebody other than me. Wow. All right, that's fine. Thanks, Ryan. Whatever. So I there's a lot of other things to go into, but I wanted to talk a little bit about, like, the elephant in the room here for me is, like, it's hypocritical to be talking about the importance of mental health on social media. I understand the caustic horror of the fact that social media is not good for mental health. And here we are on social media talking about how important it is to take care of your mental health. I saw two videos, though, on Instagram that really highlighted how we use social media, how we use these tools to enrich and enjoy our lives. The first one was a guy feeding birds off of his balcony. And he was finding a lot of joy in feeding his birds and posting it to Instagram. And he was like, I don't know what birds these are. I'm just enjoying feeding them. And the first video had all these people pushing up their glasses saying, well, actually, those are crows. And then the next video, he was like, yeah, these are crows. And then somebody in the chat was like, no, actually, those are ravens. And then they were arguing in his chats. And the third video was him saying, here, chickens. Because he's like, look, I'm here for my joy, not your joy. Like, I'm enjoying feeding these birds. Doesn't matter what I call them. Right. And I love the way he approached his own mental health. I'm not going to deal with the trolls in the chat, and I'm not going to go into the comment section with this kind of mentality. Another one that I watched soon after was not quite as funny, but just as meaningful, was a dad came home, and he's a vet, and he came home, a soldier, and his son was playing with an iPhone at home that they had just for the kids to use that wasn't connected to the internet, so he could use it. And the kid was using Translate, and the dad's like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm learning Spanish. And then the dad is like, oh, you're not taking Spanish. You're pretty young for Spanish. What are you doing that for? And the kid said, well, I got a boy in my class who doesn't speak a lot of English, and I want to talk to him, and I'm learning Spanish. And the dad was like, this is fantastic. It's like he's learning something. He's connecting with another kid. It's compassion involved. And the problem I had was I read the comments. Yeah. And of course, what I found there was not enjoyable. And what it made me realize, though, in both of these videos was, what are we doing? Like, are we trying to find joy here, or are we trying to push our glasses up and start some kind of drama? When it was like, are you stealing something from a child that was doing something compassionate and from their heart, or a man who's feeding birds, right? And for me, it all comes back to, how are we trying to come from a place that is curious and not judgmental, and coming from a place of compassion and not anger or know-it-all behavior, right? Beard knows everything, but he never comes from that place. It comes from a place of trying to make people better and be better, right? I saw these two videos back to back, and both of them encapsulated my perspective on social media, which is like, I want to present some joy because the rest of the world won't do it for you, right? And I didn't know, I wanted to hear from you guys, because obviously we're on social media all the time, but it's a place where it's easy to go down that rabbit hole of doing the opposite of what you're hoping it will do, which is create a release. I didn't know if you guys had thoughts on social media and mental health. And John, I'll start with you as far as your feelings about these things.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I feel like we've just got to a place where social media is just toxic for mental health.
Right. I mean, it's the reality.
Whether you're just observing or whether you're actively participating in doing so, like, this is social media, and I like to think we're doing something that's positive and so forth. But, the comments could come later. And right. Who knows,
because you can't control how other people
you absolutely
perceive
cannot.
And interact with
and
you.
You'll always have people that the only way they can, feel taller is to step on you.
And that brings Nate. I mean, you could go into a whole deep dive on Nate's mental health and the ways in which he uses social media, and the way his journey is captivated by his perception of how other people see him, and the value that he puts on that, right?
Yeah. And it's unfortunate, because it actually, I mean, these tools and things that we have that could, make this giant world smaller and bring us together, is used in such a divisive way so many times that it pushes us further apart. And the flaw is not social media. The flaw is us.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point.
And that's just the way it is, unfortunately. But I think things like this are good. Let's make changes. And it's an outlet for us. That these things that we care about, and we talked earlier about needing to have those stress relievers, or those things for yourself that are your kind of getaway, and this is it for some of us, and it's important, and it's important that we kind of keep our yard clean, and be good to each other. But you can't help who sneaks through the fence sometimes, and how they're going to react. So you just got to roll with it and try to stay as positive as possible.
Yeah. For my job and my life, this is my release, coming and being able to hang out with you guys and talk about things I love, shows I love, comics I love, things I'm reading or watching, is that release. But you can see in those comment section how quickly somebody's joy can be attacked, or people poking holes in the balloon. I don't know, Bob, what your thoughts are on some of these things. I loved, though, that one of these guys chose to respond with like comedy. He's like, no, my defense mechanism, like Beard, is I'm going to make a joke, or like Ted is I'm going to make a joke. Here, chickens, I'm going to feed the chickens now. And then this other guy was like, no, I'm just going to highlight a kid's perspective, a joy, a communication, and a compassion. And, chat room be damned, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the way I like to put it is that social media is not good or bad. It's how you use it. It's just a tool.
Sure.
And, for a lot of people, it just depends on, what you're doing with it. I know for myself, I'm not an emotional guy, but I'm very in touch with my feelings. And I get too wrapped up in seeing people hurt, or negativity thrown my way, and so I, at a certain point, just started to abstain from certain things and not even get involved that way.
Well, I mean, empathy means you're going to feel what somebody else is going through. It's not a bad thing. We all have to learn how to moderate ourselves with that.
Absolutely.
Right. It's a beautiful thing that you have that level of empathy.
I agree. But when it comes to some of these things, I'll say that Bueller is better at it than I am. Because even on our coffee videos, we, had some of these great conversations, and you still couldn't get away from people in the comments throwing out negative stuff, whether it was coming from a place of jealousy or coming from a place of judgment or whatever it was. And I had one guy that was just railing on me. And I got caught up in it, and finally, Beard and Ted moment, Bueller sat me down and is like, let it go. He's coming from a place of, obviously from some wounding or whatever it is, and it has no bearing on you. You're doing fine.
It's hard.
It's just so hard though, right? That reality of that one negative comment will resonate more than the 10 positives.
100%.
It's hard to not.
And it's also, it's like, it makes you just question, like, I mean, always like, it's like, why are you here then, dude? Why? It's like with comic books or movies or whatever. You know what? There's a bunch of stuff out there. If there's something you don't like, just don't read it.
Right.
Don't watch it. Don't.
Right.
Now, don't feel like you have to create some kind of enterprise to tear it down or something. Just go away. If you don't like Bob and what Bob's doing, don't watch Bob.
Nobody's forcing you to watch or read or anything, right?
But like it feels like some people just want to kind of wallow in that outrage.
Yeah.
And maybe that's their de-stressor. I don't know, but
no, I've heard of several metaphors for it, whether it's like yucking the yum or whether it's dipping the bucket, which I know is a popular series of novels for kids that my students always used to enjoy, which is bucket dipper mentality of when your bucket's empty, the desire to dip somebody else's bucket to try to fix yours, instead of realizing that by filling someone else's bucket, which Bob commented on earlier, being able to help others can be healing and impactful in ways way beyond just trying to, fill your own bucket empty with air, with emptiness.
Absolutely. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything like that, but I took a different approach to things. I stopped, worrying about reading comments. I just watch videos. I don't head into the comment section. If I do head there, it's because I'm going to, post that I liked it or
share some joy.
Exactly. I got too short a time in this world for negativity. That person that was railing on me, I ended up becoming friends with. And, what ended up happening with me is I met an amazing group of guys right here in my own town. Some of the relationships that I formed, getting together with these guys, and I'll just say it, Damien, Sleepy Reader, John, Bueller. We have absolutely, been through thick and thin on some things. We went through the death of Sam together. And we've gotten together and bared our hearts to one another. And I got to tell you, I found some people that I'm closer with than some of the people in my own church. And so there's some beautiful things that can come from this as well.
Absolutely.
I've also left it open on my channel. There's a number of times that I've told people when certain subjects have come up that if you're dealing with this, don't be alone. If you reach out to me, I can help if that's what you need, or to pray with you or whatever the case may be. And I've had a few people reach out that are just in heart-wrenching situations that they would have never divulged if somebody hadn't opened the door to allow them to be able to do that. Some very harsh addiction things that they needed help with. And I was able to have conversations and at least point people in the right direction. And that's kind of one of the things about my channel that I never expected would happen. And so I have absolutely loved some of the relationships that have formed as a result. So I've tended to let go of the negativity or worrying about what anybody says about me, but I completely leave it open for anybody that wants to be my friend or needs some help. or wants to travel this crazy road with me in any way, shape, or form, and try to create something positive out of it. And
that's the goal of the social media, is to be more social and less media, right? To have the interaction that's more personal and less of the facade of, oh, it's got to look perfect and it's got to be, I can't talk about my problems and I can't, I think getting to a place of, YouTube should be you. It doesn't have to be all the other stuff. And I think that's the goal, at least the stuff I try to watch and engage with personally. I wanted to highlight some comments. Firstly, my dad slaying with a great author recommendation, Matt Haig. And The Midnight Library is one of the best novels I read last year. And it's about suicide. It's a very heavy topic, and about a character who then in the afterlife finds this library of all the possible lives they could have lived, and all these other novels of themselves. And they try to see if they can find the perfect one where they would have been happy and they would have been life would have been perfect. And it's a great novel. And he's just had another novel as well that apparently I need to read as well. So now I got another one to read. But obviously, topics of anxiety and depression and mental health are a big part of his work. So glad my dad highlighting that. That's fantastic. And then, a lot of great people in the chat. Got TJ here. He says, I found Facebook very toxic. I found on Instagram an oasis of positive things. But for me, I've noticed people who feel the same way about every different platform, because they've found, like Bob is saying, a group of people on a given platform that they were able to connect with. And so I think, to the point John was making, it's not the platform, right? It's the people interacting with it and how they're choosing to interact with it. Tyler, he says, nobody will force me to watch Bob. Come on, Tyler. Nobody likes you, Tyler. Come on, get out of here.
His name is Tyler?
That is Tyler. Huh. Shattered Glass. He's the other half of Whack Comics with Lee.
Yeah.
So you can find those guys making a lot of good laughs. And I'm glad you read Midnight Library too. I really loved it. My whole family read it. Everybody and my daughters both read it. I thought it was really great. I mean, obviously they're older girls, they're teenagers, so like it's not a kid's book, but they were definitely able to handle the material. I don't know quite how to wrap this up. We're almost at an hour and a half. I guess, John, did you have were there scenes, characters, moments, things that we didn't get to that you would like to take a moment to discuss? I don't want to.
I mean, there's a ton. We could talk all night. I will say that the confrontation scene where with Nate and Ted could take us in a whole nother hour. So right. I don't know if we should even get into that, because it's kind of where Nate tells him, you built me up like I was the most important thing, in the world, and then you just abandoned me, and and you shouldn't be here, I earned this and you did it. Yeah, exactly. And you should be home with your son. And everything he says is no doubt things Ted has already said to himself in his head over and over again, and he knows all of that.
Well, I think it's predicated on Nate's journey. And if you watch closely on the house of cards that is Nate's ego or self-esteem, the fragility of Nate and the journey he's going through to realizing that he's putting the value in all the wrong places.
And but just that scene, is another one that kind of sums up, we've seen really throughout that this kind of journey of your career, whether or your job or what you do, whether it's a professional athlete or whatever, can have huge impact on your mental health. And then relationships, whether they're, parental or fraternal or so forth, are the other, impactful. How we interact is the big, impact for mental health. Some of it's genetic, some of it's, nature versus nurture and all that stuff. But, it really kind of, a lot of that hit home. That so much of our own mental health can sometimes be reaction to something else we experienced with someone else, not just parents, and that's a key, is to kind of be aware of what things are affecting you, or trying to figure out what things, are still affecting you in some way.
And I think both Nate and Jamie are characters who sometimes fail to realize that as much as they have struggles with one parent, their other parent was there for them the whole time. Jamie makes that comment about his mom and how I don't think about how much I should be cheering, thinking about her in the stands and not worrying about where my dad is in the stands. And it's the same with Nate, who has a mom who's always seems to be very supportive, but dad who doesn't necessarily give him much of the time of day. But it's easy to focus on the negatives and not the positives and ignore some of those things. Bob, was there other stuff that we didn't get to? Obviously, we didn't spend a ton of time on the Diamond Dogs, but we did talk a lot about, finding that community that supports you and you can be honest with. And of course, Nate and like John was mentioning, Nate and his some of his journey. Was there stuff that you wanted to get to?
I mean, I don't know if we hit on a lot. I don't know if I wanted to get to it. I was just, free form discussion here. Whatever came up, I was going to be, willing to talk about. I think one of the things that we didn't hit on was, the journey that both Ted and Rebecca took together, over the course of the series, and the friendship that formed by the end of season 1 and how they grew with each other over the course of the show. And that's why I think her goodbye was, so poignant. And I love, the Oklahoma interactions because that speaks to the amount of trust that they ended up having with each other, which is, again, I truly believe is the kind of message of the story, is that, in healing in any way, shape, or form is learning how to trust again. And that relationship exemplified that, I think, more than the other one.
Totally. Great.
And so, that's one of the things that stood out to me. And then favorite scenes, I my favorite scene is that dart scene where he takes it to barbecue sauce. That just
so good.
Still gets to me.
So good.
So many moments.
But I mean, that's the core. That's where the core be curious, not judgmental philosophy of the series. And ultimately, I think a lot of the mental health elements, at least in my life, the more I can focus on the curiosity and the compassion and not on the frustration, the negativity, the judgment side, I find I'm a happier person and able to then extend that to other people.
Right.
Yeah.
If there's anything that I'd like to just mention is that, healing in any way, shape, or form is something you cannot do yourself. You need people. And again, the very thing that we need the most is the very thing that's hurt us the most. And whether it comes from going to a group or, having a complete knockdown, drag out argument with someone where in the end you start, having a deeper conversation, or you're working alongside of somebody and it fosters an atmosphere of being able to have that conversation.
Right.
This is the areas where real healing can take place. It has to be done in relationship. And so I'd encourage anybody that if you're in that place, don't try to stay by yourself.
I mean, isolation is not a solution for sure. I mean, there's definitely times when we all need breaks from society. We need breaks from social media. But it's a great point. And I think that's what the Diamond Dogs do for one another.
And it's
that group of friends.
It's hard to, especially with any kind of mental health issue, to not feel alone. But this is a great big world. There's somebody who has experienced what you're going through. There's somebody, more than likely, that's trained to be able to help you go through whatever you're going through. So don't shut yourself off. Don't isolate in those times, and think that, you're totally unique and nobody has ever dealt with this before. There's help. There's always help. And just don't stop looking for it. Don't stop.
Great point.
Reaching out and looking for it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bobby.
Mine's not even enough yet. I'll get there eventually. TJ, this is a great point, and it was something that I was hoping to achieve with these Ted Lasso discussions. Is I know that this is a series that is probably the least watched of any of the ones I've talked about so far, but I'm hoping that the discussion topics are interesting enough, and the people as amazing as these guys are allowing people to really find ways to just be a part of a deeper discussion, in this case, a mental health discussion. So I appreciate these two gentlemen sacrificing an hour and a half tonight to hang out and talk about this show. Like I said, the links to their YouTube channels are down below, and you can find them on Instagram, Brother John Comics and Everything Comics. Huge thank you guys for making this time and for talking a little Diamond Dogs together. Diamond Dogs dismount.
I think this is great. I'm glad you're doing this and to be a part of it. I appreciate it.
Well, you guys were two of the first people to jump on when I was like, hey, I want to do this show. And you guys were like, yes, sign me up. Let's make this happen. So
I have to ask real quick. Are you guys watching? Did you watch Shrinking?
Great. I'm so glad you brought this up.
Because
I have fully watched it, the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay. In terms of dealing with grief, it's tackling another. It's hilarious, and it's tackling a really important issue. Is how
have you heard of that one, Bob?
No. Which one is this one?
So this is on Apple TV as well. For those that don't know, the gentleman who plays Roy is also a writer on this show as well. And
it's Bill Lawrence production,
same production company, Bill Lawrence, who did both, and he did Scrubs as well. And it focuses on Jason Segel from How I Met Your Mother, is a therapist who just lost his wife and has basically spent the last year derailing and not really caring for his daughter. And he's kind of finally sort of coming out of the fog of that experience. And the gentleman who runs his therapist group is Harrison Ford's character, and Harrison is his mentor and also been trying to like keep his daughter from having to be in the shadow of what he's going through. And so it centers around the therapy office and his home life and all of these things.
I'll have to give it a shot.
Yeah, it's very fun.
That all sounds very heavy, but it's hilarious.
It's very fun. Yeah. And it's honestly one of the best performances I've seen from Harrison Ford in a really long time. He is
saying a lot.
Phenomenal.
His interaction with the girl that plays the daughter is just, it's beautiful.
He is excellent. And so a lot of the same vibe you'll get from this, you probably got from Ted Lasso. And I won't say that it's as good, because that's not really fair. And it's only, one, it's only one season in, or is it two seasons?
Yeah, just one.
Just one. Yeah. But really worth the time if you want to continue some of that.
But and that was a shameless plug, I guess, on my part. But I mean, I have nothing to do with it. But I think shows like this are important, and I'd love to see more of them. So I'm going to talk them up whenever I can.
And if you're already paying for Apple Plus to watch Ted Lasso, now you got more to throw onto the wheel there.
Right.
That's right.
We're going to say goodbye. I want to say hey to my man, the boy who had 7. Matt, thank you for coming by. I appreciate you, sir. I'll be back for more of these. I got a lot more of these that I want to do around Ted Lasso and different themes from Ted Lasso. Like I mentioned, we'll do one on big life changes. I want to do one on mentorships. I touched briefly on the relationship between two people in a workplace. So there will be more Ted Lasso to come. And hopefully we'll be back real soon. And I won't take a big break like I did this last time. But thanks everybody for coming. Thank you, John. Thank you, Bob. And we'll see you guys again later.
Sounds good. You take care, John.
Take care, guys.
Bye, guys.